Well, Oregon's a big road favorite against Colorado. So, with that in mind, what does success actually look like? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Underdog. Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com with the promo code Locked On and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. The Ducks are certainly not an underdog going into this game against Colorado, and here to help me break it down is Max Torres. He covers the Ducks for Fan Nation at Sports Illustrated, also host of the Ducks Dish podcast. And Max, this is one of those games that if you have a conflict this time of the year, maybe like a fall wedding or something, or a family outing, if you had one game on the schedule to miss outside of Eastern Washington, this should be the one that you can miss.
Yeah, you said it in the intro, Spencer. The Ducks are quite the favorites here, going up against the new doormat of the Pac-12. I guess they were pretty bad last year too, but yeah, Colorado's had their struggles, and firing Karl Dorrell, at the time that they did, isn't going to necessarily help any program. But Sanford's done what he can here and there, and I can't remember if the win over Cal came before or after the firing, but at least they have their.
It was after.
Okay, at least they can hang their hats on that, some momentum in that regard. But, definitely looking bleak in Boulder. Nice alliteration there. But, should still be a good game for the Ducks, and, opportunity to iron things out and get ready for a pretty brutal stretch of games to close out the regular season.
Yeah, I think what Lanning has talked about all year is no more true than in this game against the Buffs, even though it's on the road. And that's that Oregon's opponent every week is Oregon. How can they play a better brand of football, the type that this coaching staff are working diligently to implement and such? And Colorado is really bad. Now, they've been better since they fired Karl Dorrell. They were competitive against Arizona State, who's not good, but they also beat Washington at home, so they're not completely incompetent. I think the Arizona State game is actually fascinating in the Pac-12 later in the year because neither team is going to be above 500, but that game is going to mean so much for both of them. Anyway, don't want to get too sidetracked, but they were competitive with Arizona State last week. They have a win against Cal. They're still not good, Max, but they're at least more confident, I think, and play harder. I've seen clips of Sanford, the OC, now interim head coach, who probably would like to get the job and is going to coach that way. So although this is a Colorado team that is really bad, you can't go into it and think that they're just so beaten down. It'd be different if Dorrell were still there, but the reason this line is so big is because of the talent and the coaching gap. But it's not because Colorado is going to show up and just not even go out and play hard, right? Sanford is a guy who, at least a little bit, they've been rallying behind and trying to play hard for, and put a product on the field that they can at least somewhat be proud of. So maybe there'll be a little fight early, but overall, there's just not a lot of talent on this Colorado team either.
Yeah, and that was one of the storylines, I think, from last season to this season, especially with the era of the transfer portal. Even though they were a pretty bad team last year, that didn't keep teams away in terms of, trying to raid them for their talent, with obviously Christian Gonzalez coming over to Oregon, following Demetrius Martin from Boulder. And then you also had Brendan Rice staying in the Pac-12 as well and heading out to USC. Their best playmaker on offense, no longer there from a year ago. So they've kind of had to shift some pieces here. You've had a couple of quarterbacks playing. I know they got McGowan right now, or no, McGowan was hurt rather. So I think JT Shrout is looking like the guy right now, the Tennessee transfer. So they're moving some pieces around, still kind of trying to find, the combination that works best. But yeah, you said it earlier a little bit, this isn't a game that Oregon can take lightly. But I think that's something that is a big difference between last year and this year, is that they're doing a better job of not taking opponents lightly and not playing down to their opponent's level if they're far inferior, like this team, like Cal last year. So I think that, this is a good opportunity to make another statement win, and, kind of sharpen some things up and get some good reps for those, younger guys that you might need later on. Even if they're not young, just trying to get deeper into your depth chart, I think should be one of the overarching goals for Oregon in this game. Because like we said, it's the last chance they have to do that before, things really get turned up a notch. It's not, I'm not saying that they're like bye weeks, but, Cal in this game, it's kind of a nice break in terms of just not having that many heavy hitters. And, the timing of this is pretty beneficial for them, seeing that everyone's going to have their eyes on a Husky hate week next week.
Yeah, and you'd almost prefer to alternate them in a way
Sure.
because of the quality opponents that the Ducks have coming down the stretch. You got Washington next week at home, Utah the following week at home, that's senior day, and then Oregon State on the road. And the Beavs, we'll see how they perform later tonight as this episode drops on Friday morning against Washington and Seattle. But I think those are both good teams that will give Oregon a fight. Neither team is a rollover. I think Oregon State's defense is quite legit and will present a challenge, at least through the air. I don't know about on the ground. They've been up and down in that area, but those are good teams. We know what Utah is capable of. I have not sold my stock in the Utes, Max. I still think they're good. The question for Utah in a couple weeks is how healthy they will be going into that game. But looking at Colorado here, JT Shroud has had moments. He's a big-time arm talent, but he does not have it in terms of a feel for the quarterback position. He had a game earlier this year where he was 5 of 21 through the air with 2 interceptions, and that's not something that should ever happen for a Power 5 quarterback. It's a testament to where this team has been. I think he's been a little better from what I've seen since Sanford took over as the head coach, but Sanford's still the guy calling the plays, so it's a work in progress, or really, I don't think they've even started the work to begin the progress yet. They're just tearing it all the way down. They'll hire a new coach in this offseason. But from time to time, you watch JT Shroud, especially last week against Arizona State, where he was again inconsistent, but he can make some throws. You watch him throw a ball and you go, man, that was a really good throw. That was real. But then he'll have some throws that are head scratchers. And I look at this matchup of Oregon's defense and the opposing quarterback similar to a week ago. I think Shroud will have a couple moments where he makes a great throw and it's a big play offensively, but overall, his stat line at the end of the day should look similar to Plummer's, which were just over 200 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks.
Yeah, I could kind of see that being the case as well. As long as you're not giving up, big drives, big sustained drives, and letting Colorado get some momentum, I think that's really what you want to avoid if you're, the Oregon defense here, because that happened at times against Cal. And then we saw Jack Plummer be able to make some throws to some talented skill players over there at Cal. And just looking at Shroud's line here, there's only been 2 games so far he's played this year of the 6 where he's completed 50% or more of his passes. And you see that and you kind of wonder about the accuracy a little bit, about the decision-making. So it's kind of another opportunity, I think, for this Oregon front to take a good step forward, for that secondary to try to force some turnovers. Brian Addison's been doing really well with picks in back-to-back weeks. So I think that it bodes well for Oregon, but at the same time, you got to be on your assignment. You got to be playing fundamentally sound, because every now and then we continue to see it kind of at times in games, Spencer, where they're arm tackling, or we see the penalties come up. And Lanning talked about that as one of the areas that he wanted to hone in on this week, was the pre-snap penalties and the red zone offense as well. So even though this is not the best team, you still got to do what you're supposed to: get off the field on 3rd down, move the chains. Not have stupid penalties. There's a lot of boxes that you still need to check and to get out of there with a win. And I'm not saying like, oh, wow, Oregon's on upset alert, but it's just more along the lines of you don't want to take it lightly. And Oregon still is not the team that they want to be or they're capable of being. And I think that was one of the big takeaways that we had last week. That was actually what I asked Lanning. He was kind of just saying, like more of along the lines of our best is yet to come. And I think that was kind of what made the Cal win pretty underwhelming. So in a weird way, I want to say that maybe some players on this team have a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth because they know they could do better than what they put on the field last week against the Golden Bears.
Yeah, the Ducks' biggest opponent this week is certainly Oregon, and there are a number of things that I want to see from the Ducks in this game for me to look at it and say, well, I think that was a successful week and give me confidence going into Washington. This episode also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. No tricks right there, just straight up. It's the easiest place to spice up the college football season. You go to the Underdog website, create an account, look at the different pick'em choices for the Ducks every week. You can look at Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, Bucky Irving, who might be poised for a big bounce back for reasons that we will talk about coming up here on the show, not just because he had only 32 yards last week, but you want to look at whatever players you think are going to be over or under their totals. It's really easy and available to play in over 30 states. Sign up with promo code LOCKEDON, one word, LOCKEDON, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. You deposit $100, get $100 free. It's that simple. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code LOCKEDON, one word, LOCKEDON. Get in on the college football pick'em action with Underdog today. So, Max, in this game for Oregon, they should have no problem scoring points at all whatsoever, because Colorado, their offense has been playing better. I mean, their defense kind of led them to the win against Cal. Their offense led them to be competitive against Arizona State, but the Sun Devils' defense isn't that good. I want to start with what we could see from Oregon offensively in this game. And I think stylistically, you're going to see what we saw against Stanford. Bo Nix is going to run the ball maybe more than he throws it. It will feel at times. You're going to get a heavy dose of Bucky Irving and Noah Woodington, who I saw something on Twitter the other day that they're the most explosive running back tandem so far in the country. Offensive line deserves some credit for that, but both guys have run really well. Most carries of, more than 10, 15, or 20 yards this season in the country. They've been really, really good. This is a Colorado rush defense, Max, that is allowing 237 yards a game on the ground, which is a lot. Oregon is running for 235 a game. I've got to be honest, after watching what they did to Arizona and Stanford, and this is a similar caliber of defense, I am expecting the Ducks to run for over 300 yards here. But last week, you had a pretty stout Cal run defense. They held Oregon in check more than most teams have. It was still 170 some odd yards at 4.4 yards a carry, but that's below where Oregon has been. This should be, for the Oregon offense, a Stanford or Arizona game where it's 7-ish yards a carry. You got multiple guys over 50, 60 yards, 300 as a team. Nix probably has a couple big runs because Colorado, they just don't have the horses to keep up on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and that was more along the lines of kind of where I was going to head with my response. So I don't want to take exactly what you were saying, but I kind of see the game script maybe being a little bit more Bo Nix run heavy, because Colorado isn't really a team that has those kind of athletes, on the edge. They don't have the DJ Johnsons or even the Mace Funas, that Oregon has. So that'll make them, I think, more vulnerable to that on the ground. And to your point about the Cal game, yeah, it was 174 yards, which was weird because it was like the quietest 174 yards that I've seen Oregon put up. And Cal was like, I don't want to say selling out, but, they were definitely putting a lot of effort into stopping the run. And that showed us, Oregon is able to do something this year that they weren't able to do last year. When teams last year said, okay, we're going to take away the run, now you got to beat us through the air, they were kind of like, okay, what do we do here? I mean, maybe I shouldn't say they, because we know, Mario Cristobal just wanted to run the ball, and Moorhead didn't get to do his thing, but they're versatile, and 174 yards on the ground, you hear that, and that was part of the 586 yards that they were able to put up. So I expect the Oregon offense to have an absolute field day against Colorado, and maybe we see some a little bit more of a resurgence from the Oregon backs on the ground, even though they had a pretty solid day. It's just getting contributions a little bit from everywhere. And then maybe we'll see what other receivers can maybe get involved here, because Chase Cota is still kind of up in the air. No new update there from Dan Lanning after talking to him today. Listen to that press conference. So we'll have to see.
Today being Wednesday, by the way, there might be new news by the time.
I was kind of tripping up when I said that, but yeah. So no, nothing new from. We won't hear anything new from Lenny unless he gives us an injury update on the coaches show, which is on Thursday nights. But I doubt he would do that.
So that has not been their MO to give a lot of information about injuries. It's been very tight to the chest.
Exactly. So we'll see. Maybe we'll see some more Josh Delgado. He's a guy that's been there for a while. But we haven't seen too much of him. Dante Thornton, Chris Hudson is looking to bounce back after dropping that touchdown. What would have been a touchdown against Cal.
Had a good game though.
He still had a good game. Like I
still had a good game.
He bounced back really well.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'd like to see a lot of Thornton. No disrespect to Delgado, of course. He's made some nice plays and, continues. I feel like he's been there for a really, really long time. And every time he gets on the field, whether it's as a returner or as a receiver, seems like he does what he's supposed to. And nothing more, nothing less. But if you're thinking long term, not just, getting a guy some touches to keep him involved and keep him away from the dreaded TP combo of words, but I think also you got to give those guys an opportunity to develop. So I would like to see Cota sit out of this game because I want him to be 100% healthy for Washington and the stretch run, right? Oregon does not need Chase Cota to play in this game, to score points offensively. They might not even need their first string receivers to do that. Obviously, you want them out there. You want them to be confident, continue to develop chemistry within the structure and flow of the offense and such. But I'd like to see Thornton get out there and really involve himself. And I just don't want Chase Cota to have an opportunity to get dinged up. And, that would just it would just feel unnecessary because even if it's when the game is still quote unquote in the balance, which it never really should be, frankly, like Colorado should not be able to move the ball and Oregon should not be able to be stopped in this game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, unless even if it's a fake punt or something. Colorado should not be able to move the ball. Because I think if you're Oregon, you have to expect that Colorado is going to try and dial something like that up. But this should be complete and utter dominance for Oregon. And I want to go to the defensive side of the ball, Max, because I saw a lot of improvement and growth from that defense a week ago. I know they gave up a couple big pass plays. Here's the difference that I think we'll see this week. Cal has some nice receivers. Plummer, not super mobile, can make plays if you give him time. Their offensive line stinks. But they've got a couple of receivers that I've watched numerous times this year and I think are really good, led by J. Michael Sturdivant. And the other guys they've got in behind him, I think are good players. Colorado doesn't have those sorts of guys. They lost Brendan Rice, and you're looking around going, I don't see that caliber of player. Inconsistent quarterback play, not great offensive line play, and Oregon should dominate in the trenches on both sides regardless. You don't have elite playmakers. Their running back is kind of a nice player, but he's not going to do a ton. He's not the most explosive player in the world. This should be an even more dominant outing from the Oregon defense. That's what I expect. Like Cal made a couple nice plays. I give him full credit for that. And then after that, the Ducks shut him down, and that's what I wanted to see. And I was happy with how the defense played last week. But this one against Colorado, you shouldn't allow a drive for a touchdown with the starters out there that's over 50 some odd yards. I mean, you really shouldn't. Like, that should not happen.
Yeah, no, it's totally fair to set the standard high for this one. That was one of my biggest kind of hopes, or I guess my to-do list for Oregon over these 2 weeks against Cal and Colorado. Especially, we know the offense sputtered in the first quarter against Colorado. We all know that, but
against
they
Cal.
obviously against Cal.
But it's Cal.
But they got it going, is what I'm saying. The offense is not the concern for Oregon. There's things here and there that you could tweak, but they're going to put up points as long as Bo Nix is doing his thing and the offensive line is firing all cylinders. But where the uncertainty kind of lies and the room for growth on this team is on the defensive side of the ball. So you get these kind of easier matchups and you should dominate. And I think that I'm right there with you. Just that I don't know if I'd say a drive of 50 yards like that specifically, but you want to see more sacks. You want to see more turnovers. You don't want to see mental lapses. And I think maybe a good goal for this game is no garbage time points. I think a lot of fans have been upset about that, seeing that they're kind of a common occurrence, a week-to-week basis for Oregon, because they've actually been able to build leads, unlike last year. So some of these reserve backup guys get in. And the standard still is the same. Lanning says it like every week. The standard's the standard. So they don't want to be giving up points regardless of who's in there. And I think that when you can take those steps and your, second, third team, what have you, you're building that dependable depth, and you're ensuring that if something happens down the line, those guys are ready to go because they have some snaps under their belt, and they're they know what the expectation is. So I think that both sides should dominate, but I'm really going to be focusing more so on the defense to see what they're able to do against not a very talented offensive group, quite frankly.
The other thing too, defensively, about the garbage time points, I don't care about them that much.
I know you said, yeah, you said I was listening to some of that.
I just I don't know. But here's a thought. Here's where I'll defend the people who say, man, stop giving up garbage time points and makes the defense look bad, and yada yada. Like, all it's really doing is altering the statistics, because if the defense were actually as bad as the numbers would suggest, which is bottom third in the Pac-12 in a number of categories other than rush yards, if they were actually that bad, Max, Oregon would not be 7-1. Even if you have a really good offense, if your defense were actually that terrible, they would be probably 5-3 or at least 6-2 if it were actually that bad. That's my case there. But for the people who are frustrated by it, I will make this point. As Oregon looks to the college football playoff, which they're squarely in the running for, and I talked about that a lot on yesterday's show, style points are going to matter here, because Oregon has the opposite of style points with that week 1 loss against Georgia hanging over them and 49-3, which, as we all know, was a disaster. If you're going to overcome that, it might help if the committee can look at the Ducks' schedule and say, well, here are some scores where they're really, really dominating. And if you do that down the stretch, recency bias is a real thing, and that can help the Ducks. That's the only thing that I can say I would like to see them, or the only reason why I can say I would like to see them not allow those sorts of points. But at the end of the day, it's not like last year where even when they did build leads, they'd let the other team come back into it enough to the point where the starters had to be in, where it was a stressful get right. Think of UCLA. Right. UCLA on the road, 17-point fourth quarter lead. Then all of a sudden, defense can't get stops, offense couple of turnovers, and they get back at. Like, we're not having that. Like, these are, in college football terms, big time first world problems. I mean, like, not even first world problem, like 0th world problems. That you're not winning by as many points as you want to or arguably should. That is a high class problem to have.
Yeah, and they're lucky that they're in that situation. I think now, to a degree, some people are maybe splitting hairs because the playoff rankings came out. So it's like, okay, some people are using that as ammunition against Oregon, but really I feel like the only blemish they have is that blowout loss to Georgia. And I saw such an interesting tweet the other day. It was talking about what was it? The whole thing was the fact that some people that Oregon could be in the top 4 if they didn't schedule a cupcake like Georgia is everything that's wrong with the current playoff system. It was along those lines, but it just kind of got me thinking, if that's what you're pointing to as Oregon's weak point, their lowest point in the season, I mean, it's literally just been an upward trajectory from there. So as long as they take care of their business, moving forward here, that shouldn't really be a problem. And, especially because you get some quality opponents coming up, if you can get wins over them. We'll see if Washington can get back into the top 25 before traveling to Eugene next week, but Utah figures to be there. And Oregon State just cracked the top 25 this past week. So I know we weren't really going in the playoff discussion, but just kind of talking about, some superlatives with this Oregon team heading into Colorado.
Yeah, and you're going to face 2 top 25 teams in all likelihood by the time the season ends. Because if Oregon State beats Washington, they will stay there, and I think we'll have an opportunity to be in the top 25 for the college football playoff rankings by the time they host the Ducks. Utah will be there for sure. They're playing Arizona at home this week. They'll blow them out. But if Washington wins this week, then they will be in the top 25, and then it guaranteed, right? Like, there are quality wins that Oregon will have the opportunity to get as the schedule goes on. But we don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because there's still a lot of football to be played. So let's get to our game predictions here, Max. And I don't think there are going to be any problems here. I don't even think you're going to have the slow start that you saw against Cal or even Arizona. Like, the Ducks have gotten off to imperfect starts on the road, but this Colorado team, though they've been revitalized a little and they're playing with a little bit more energy and a little bit more confidence and such, they are still really bad. They are still a really bad football team, and it sucks for the Buffs. Are they better than they were when they started 0-5? Yeah, sure. But I don't know if the bar could have gone any lower. And Oregon's a 30-point favorite on the road for a reason. Colorado's not going to be the first Pac-12 team to hold Oregon under 40 points. In fact, I think this will be the first time in conference play the Ducks hit the half a century mark. I'll go 50. I'll go 52. I think around 52-13. I think you're going to have it somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny that you're kind of putting me on the spot here because I wanted to get our prediction story up today, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. But I can tell you this. I mean, so I'm thinking about it on the fly here. Colorado has only scored more than 20 points once the entire season, and they lost to Arizona State. That tells a lot right there. And I'm right there with you. I don't think that Colorado is going to be the team that keeps Oregon under the 40 mark. I'm gonna up it a little bit more. I'm gonna go up in the 60s. Let's go 63 to 13. I like the 13 mark because then they're moving the ball a little bit, but you have some drives stalling out with some field goals. So yeah. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I think Colorado will have an early drive that probably, goes down the field, looks good, but then it stalls out, and then maybe they find a touchdown later in the game. But other than that, I don't expect them to move the ball. They shouldn't move the ball. And, going into the Cal game, I said no reason to allow over 20 points. And the starters did not allow over 20 points, which is why I was happy with it. I know they ended with 24, but you had a lot of backups on the field. I mean, the last touchdown that Cal scored was Kamari Terrell. Glad he's seen some action and whatnot, but he's a true freshman, hasn't played a bunch, and he fell down. Any of the starting defensive backs falling down? I don't think so. I know because I watch them all the time, and though imperfect, they are not literally falling down to create a de facto busted coverage. So I think that Cal's got some better weapons. So even when the backups hopefully get into this game, Max, they shouldn't allow Colorado to move the ball either because they should just be a more talented bunch. So no excuses, ifs, ands, or buts about it. Colorado should not get to 20 points in this game, and I don't think that they will. And Oregon, 31.5 point road favorites. Kind of tells you all you need to know, but hopefully you enjoyed all the information that we brought you here today. Anyway, me and my guy, Max Torres, you are a fan favorite here on the channel, by the way, covering the Ducks for Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated and host of the Ducks Dish podcast. It is always good to have you on the show.
Always a pleasure to be on with you, Spencer. Thanks for thinking of me. Thanks for having me, and always down to talk some Ducks.
Yes, indeed. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the weekend. And go Ducks.